right. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Stress to Strength. This is module 3. So we're halfway, after today, we'll be halfway through. We're going to be focusing on the body today, right? So the body is this vast storage facility that holds memories, knowledge, and sensations. It's really remarkable. I love the body. We're going to be covering some of the underpinnings of how and why our nervous system functions the way it does. So we're going to identify unhelpful patterns of behavior that cause undue stress and learn about the internal bodily experience, which is called interoception, and then the external experience, which is called exteroception. We'll go into that in more detail. You've seen this slide before. Our body is our compass. It guides us or directs us to pay attention. And it's similar to a GPS system, but it's the soul. I liken the soul to more of a GPS system. So I'm going to ask you these questions over and over again. Remember, so what is your inner GPS whispering? How do you access your inner wisdom? And what practices do you find useful? So I'm going to go into some pretty lengthy detail here with just this image, but so most of our beliefs, habits, and behaviors are formed by age 7. So these beliefs are shaped by significant people, events, and experiences in our lives. So the people may be our primary caregivers, our teachers, and whomever is sort of exposed to us most as a child. The events might be things like birthdays, holidays, performance-based activities like sports, music, art, theater. The experiences are really anything that we engage in, see, hear, read, are taught. So these impact us in really significant ways. So these early experiences as children impact our perception. So our perception impacts our core beliefs, not only about ourselves, but also about our world. And we talked about core beliefs in module 1. So the core beliefs inform our behaviors and our body stance. And this is wild to me. And it's based off of what's called the Hakomi mindful somatic therapy method. For those who are interested, it basically is just this really gentle but really powerful experiential psychotherapy that uses mindfulness and somatic interventions to heal attachment wounds and developmental trauma. So ultimately, what I'm saying is that our bodies show others what we think, how we perceive people and the environment, and our experiences. So our physical bodies, through posture, movement, facial expressions, and even clothing choices, unconsciously communicate our internal thoughts, our feelings, our perceptions. And an example that I like to kind of show people is, so the belief might be, I'm not good enough, right? The perception might be, this belief might be lead us to feeling inadequate in social situations. So maybe we avoid challenges or we perceive criticism. The body stance might manifest as slouched shoulders, averted gaze, hesitant demeanor. So our bodies are communicating a lot of information. So in essence, our core beliefs influence how we perceive the world. So it in terms affects our emotions and our physical expressions. So those of you may or may not know kind of some of my background, but I've spent a lot of time, a lot of hours learning about the mind-body connection. And with that, I've gone through some intensive somatic therapy residency trainings. Essentially, these somatic therapies are rooted in body-oriented approach to psychology and to therapy. So basically, it addresses the feedback loop that continually runs between the mind and the body. And somatic therapies really are designed to help heal you on a cellular level. There's a lot of really cool techniques out there, and a lot of you may be familiar with them. Things like breathing exercises, meditation, dance, any kind of form of movement that feels generative. Um, there's these terminologies like body awareness, grounding, pendulation, titration, sequencing. There's a whole lot of things that help us resource when we're feeling extreme emotions. It helps us find where we are in time and space. So we can catch a glimpse of knowledge and wisdom in our bodies by seeking novel ways to mindfully explore our physicality. So some of us might be exercise, some of us might be dance, some of us it just might be a walk around the block. Some people I really want to give credit to in regard to this particular therapy, if you're interested or want to do some of your own research, is Janina Fisher, Pat Ogden, Resma Minicum, Abby Blakesley, Bessel van der Kolk. Some of you may know the Body Keeps Score book. It's really great. And also, while I'm on this note, you will all get a series of resources broken into mind, body, soul at the end of these modules. So you'll have a list of books, articles, resources, YouTube videos, podcasts. I mean, there's a lot of material there. I didn't want to inundate you before we started the modules, so this is sort of an after the fact. But I want to really stress that there are nuances within the body's communication system. So albeit pain, chronic illness, ailments, patterns of behavior are key when we're trying to figure out what the stress to strength process is. So our bodies are always talking to us, always talking to us. It's just that we need to slow down long enough to listen. Okay. So I'm going to geek out again for just a little moment because I want to talk about this image. And we need to talk about the sensory system as it receives and processes information in our awareness of our environment. So there's 4 types of perception. There's neuroception, proprioception, interoception, and exteroception. So the neuroception is the process by which the nervous system interprets some sensory information. So especially as it relates to safety or threat. So the function of it is to help us determine if in our environment we're safe or if we're in a dangerous situation. So it influences our emotional responses and behaviors. So we're constantly scanning to decide whether or not we're safe. Proprioception is the sense of a position and movement of the body's parts, right? So it enables us to coordinate movements, balance, and interact with our environment. So it's an interactive process. So within proprioception, we have interoception and exteroception. Interoception is the sense of the internal state of the body. And by that, I mean hunger, thirst, pain, emotions. That's inside of us, right? And it functions to help regulate physiological processes to respond to internal needs because that's how we survive. We need some of those needs met. Exteroception is a sense of external stimuli. So it's how we engage with the external environment: sight, sound, touch, smell, taste. It enables us to interact with and navigate our environment. So all of this is really important as we're thinking about stress and how we engage not only with our internal experience, but with our external experience. Some of us might be especially sensitive to certain sights or sounds, right? Those are who are on the autism spectrum or ADHD or anybody who's especially sensitive to external stimuli. That's what's happening. And those of us who are especially sensitive to what's happening inside, we might be hyper fixated on our internal experience. So the example that I've used before is like I had long COVID last year. And all I could do was focus on all of the internal sensations, all like the pain, the discomfort, the brain fog, the digestive issues, the headaches, that I just all I could do was focus on that. And so that's why this process is so critical, because when you focus on what's happening inside too much, it becomes totally overwhelming. It's too much. So then that's why you have to focus your senses outside of you. So it's like, okay, my stomach hurts. Okay, what's red in the room? And it sounds trite, but it's a really good exercise of playing with this intro and exteroception. Okay, so I want you to just for a moment close your eyes if you feel comfortable doing so. If not, just maybe soften your gaze and just take a deep breath in and ground into the floor or whatever surface is underneath you. Ground. So plant your feet or your seat or your body down into the earth. If you can, just really notice the surface underneath you, the solidity, the firmness. Notice that you're being held. And in all that you are right now, notice you're being held with unwavering strength. Whatever's stirring inside of you, you always have what's underneath you to hold you. And as you notice this unyielding base, what's arising in you? What physical sensations are you aware of? Are they filled with ease and calm? Is there discomfort? Is there angst? Just breathe into those sensations with gentleness. It's okay if you have a busy mind. Just notice. What emotions do you notice? And what's your reaction to those emotions? Are you pushing them away? Are you allowing them to be present? And then what thoughts come up? Can you be with those thoughts? Or do you want them to change? So you can access your physical sensations, your emotions, your thoughts at any point. All these things can be in your awareness. And it's really just noticing them as a powerful observatory tool. The more we tune into it and allow for what's here, the more it can have space and nothing needs changing. The more access we have to this moment, to this acceptance, the more we can have more time, space, and peace. The intelligence of the body is emergent and always changing. So our bodies have different things to teach us at different times in our lives. So each time you engage in any of these breathwork exercises or mindfulness practices, you can learn something new, because neither your body nor the context, nor you yourself are the same as you were a day ago. So when you feel ready, go ahead and open your eyes. If you feel compelled, I would love to hear some feedback. Does anybody want to share what they experienced?
I can go. um, so I have a big presentation coming up this week, and that's like my worst fear. Like sometimes I feel like I'd rather die than get up and do presentations. But it's getting easier. Um, but when I sat with myself, I could feel it, like I could feel it bubbling. And normally I kind of try to avoid that feeling, but I think when I sit with it, it actually kind of like calm. It's really interesting because I think the more I sit with it, the calmer I get, which I've never really done that. I always try to like kind of avoid it. So I think that was interesting to just sit with it.
Yeah, that's a powerful
Not that I'm
realization.
calm about it, but
Well,
but it
right,
helped. It
but
was like, oh, that's just what it is.
yep, yep. Thank you, Katie.
I'll share. I just have some sadness feelings lately, like sad or depressed. I'm not sure which one, but when I just let it come in and acknowledge it, and it was there, it's not so big and powerful.
Yeah.
Like it's okay, because those are normal feelings to have. And I just want them to go away because I don't like them. But I know this is part of my process that I have to go through with grieving. So I just need to kind of sit with them. And yeah.
Yeah.
So that was kind of cool.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. Some of my favorite, very brief quotes are name it to tame it, right? So you name whatever emotion you're feeling or whatever nervousness you're feeling. So the fear of public speaking or the resistance in allowing yourself to experience fear. So naming it can help reduce the amount of intensity. Nicole, if you name grief, it's like, oh, grief is here. Yeah, yeah, right. And then, so name it to tame it, and then that which we persist, or that which we resist persists. So anytime we're resisting an emotion, it's like a toddler pulling on your pant leg. It's like, I am having a tantrum and you better listen to me or else. That's what our emotions do. And so if you can just gently acknowledge them and give and validate them, it softens them enough, and the toddler kind of calms down a little. It's like, oh, you see me. Okay. you know. Yeah. Miriam says super calm feeling. I'm glad. Thank you. Okay, beautiful. Okay, we're going to get into some more geekiness. So as part of the somatic or body work, understanding our nervous system is critical to navigating work, life, relationships, social interactions, just our everyday experiences. I love these comparative images because just as the tree cannot grow until it has deep grounded roots, we cannot grow until we develop connectedness to ourselves. So the image of the human shows what the vagus nerve is like in the body. So the vagus nerve is also known as like the 10th cranial nerve. So it's this long nerve that connects the brain to the body and controls a whole lot of bodily functions. So it's part of the parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for involuntary functions like digestion and heart rate and respiration. Sometimes it's called the rest and digest system. So, with that said, most of us have heard about fight, flight, and freeze, right? So, it's your brain and body's way of assessing threats. Sometimes you get into these overactive or underactive processes or states based on previous experiences. So, I'm going to go into a theory. It's called the Polyvagal Theory. And this is based on basically what our body does when we experience threat. So it's this model that describes how our autonomic nervous system regulates our health and our behavior. So the previous slide showed the nerve bundles throughout the spinal cord and the brainstem, right? The polyvagal theory suggests that the nervous system has 3 states that correspond to different levels of perceived threat. So at the very bottom is social engagement system. That's really where we want to be. That's the sweet spot, right? So it's called the ventral vagal system. So it's the optimal state for health and well-being. It enables us to connect with other people. It helps us with effective communication, emotion regulation. It responds to cues of safety in the environment and interactions. So it promotes this relaxation and social engagement and interaction. It adapts to stress. So people in this state feel grounded and present and capable of forming meaningful connections, right? It can really help reduce anxiety and stress, negative reactions to life adversities. So you'll notice that some of the words in here are joy and presence, groundedness, compassion, curiosity, and openness. This is where we hope to be most of the time. The sympathetic nervous system is sort of like activated in danger or challenge, and it's perceived stress. So it doesn't actually need to be quote unquote real. It can be our mind making up stories about what's happening. So it increases our heart rate, our blood pressure, our muscle tension, and shoots us into fight or flight. So it's known as mobilization. So it activates this, I'm gonna fight off a threat or run away from it. And you'll notice that some of the words are things like rage, anger, irritation, frustration, panic, fear, anxiety, worry, concern. If we go even further up the process in the dorsal vagal, it's this like this freeze state. So triggered when we feel trapped, hopeless, helpless. It pulls us away from connection, out of awareness, and into a state of self-protection. So in moments of extreme danger, we can shut down, feel frozen. It's like this indication of the dorsal vagal like completely taking over. So it might look like depression, disassociating, collapsing, sort of playing possum, right? It's described as immobilization. You feel like you can't really do anything. You don't know what to do. So words that sort of describe this state are things like numbness, disassociation, helplessness, shame, trapped. So it can be kind of an extreme experience. It's like this preparation for death, because freeze can be like your body's last resort to keep you alive. The reason we're talking about this is not to freak you out, but it's to help you understand that our bodies go through these processes on a pretty regular basis, and it's important for us to identify when we're there. So as a person experiences or perceives an experience, it stimulates threat, and so activation occurs. So fight or flight is typically the first response. So, and then as we travel up the bell curve further and further into activation, ultimately what happens is that our body can't sustain that indefinitely. So basically it goes into shutdown and overwhelm. So what are some interventions that work, right? So the dorsal vagal, so the immobilization, that's the freeze state. I'll just kind of go through a list of things that are helpful. I'm not going to get too geeky about it, but I am going to give you some things to do. If you notice that you ever get into a state where it's like, you just, maybe you're in a conflict-oriented conversation and you just don't even know what to do. You just shut down and completely close off. That's freeze. You don't have to necessarily be in harm's way in that you're going to die, but conflict sometimes for people, it just freaks them out to the point of freeze. So things you can do, body squeezing, like you can just start to open up your body and just squeeze, right? It helps your body come back online. Crying can be really helpful. Pushing against a wall or a chair, just pushing, just that amount of pressure can be really helpful. A belly massage, something, that feels really good to either your belly or your heart. Cold shower can be really great. Spending time in nature. Any kind of movement that you can do to get your body to wake up, because it's in shutdown mode. The sympathetic, fight or flight activation or mobilization, things that activate the anxiousness, anger reaction. Things that can be helpful in that state are things like walking, running, hiking, biking, stretching, yoga, dancing. Something that, again, kind of engages your body, but helps you engage it in a way that helps process the activation energy that's pulsing through you. There's another really cool thing that I love to tell people about as it relates to the vagus nerve are things like gurgling with warm water, or humming, or singing, or chanting. So that's why at the end of, well, I don't know if that's why, but often when you'll wrap up a yoga session, they'll do some ohms, right? It can be really helpful to massage the vagus nerve. It helps calm that down. Some deep belly breathing can be really effective. So there's this really great quote that I love that Bruce Perry talks about. He says, to change any neural network in the brain, we need to provide patterned, repetitive input to reach poorly organized neural networks involved in the stress response. So any neural network that is activated in a repetitive way will change. So that's why we talked last time about neuroplasticity. The more you practice something over and over again, the more chance you have to build new neural pathways and to build a new pattern within your body, right? I mean, he goes on to kind of say something similar. I'm not going to read all that. It's a lot. Okay, we'll go here. So this video kind of shows the connection between the mind and the body. The neural pathways in the brain, like I said, are connected to the vagus nerve and run along the spine. So as we build and rehearse thoughts, we send signals to the rest of our body. So sensations are nonverbal language of our bodies that give us signals about our emotions and our physical needs. So this cycle is happening over and over and over again, and it's happening at a pace that you are probably unaware of, right? Which is why it's important to slow down, like I mentioned, to really pay attention to like what's going on, not only with my thoughts, but what's also going on with my body. So a lot of us have kind of learned to disconnect from our bodies because we live in a cognitive world. We live in just like keep going, this kind of hustle culture, and we become numb to our needs. And or we think that we're being overly sensitive, and so we don't attend to them in ways that maybe need to be. So I'm going to do another kind of mindfulness practice because, again, this whole process is to slow it down. So just for a moment, become aware of your arms. You don't need to close your eyes. If you want, you can, but no need. Just become aware of your arms and notice, like, how do they feel? Do they feel numb, tingly, heavy, light, relaxed? What does it feel like? Tense, maybe? Pay attention to your right arm. Kind of start at your shoulder and kind of make your way all the way down to your fingertips. Just notice. And then focus your attention on your left arm. Starting at your shoulder, making your way all the way to your fingertips. Do they feel the same? Do they feel different? To take it another step further, you can squeeze one of your arms. Let's try squeezing your left arm. Just kind of go up and down it. See what it feels like. And then try to do the same thing with your right arm. Just squeeze up and down. See what you've noticed. Did anybody notice a contrast? Was there a difference in your arms?
Well, my right arm is stronger than my left arm, so there was a pressure difference in that, like my right hand could squeeze harder than my left.
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
My right arm and shoulder always ache. My left doesn't as much.
Uh-huh. Okay. Yeah. I noticed that my left hand is sweating because it's in this sling. Like, wow, my right arm's really warm because of my left hand. So my point in doing that, and there's a lot of other body-oriented exercises, is that you get really familiar with these sensations that happen on a really micro level. So even just doing that one exercise helps you gauge what feels like what in each part of your body, right? You just get familiar with the different sensations. It's similar to what we mentioned before. When we lean into the feeling, we can maybe dissipate the intensity of the pain or the sensation. All right, this is another similar graphic to the polyvagal theory, but this is it's called the window of tolerance. And I talk about this with people often because many of us have a background in some kind of trauma, whether it's big T, little t, something's happened in our lives. Honestly, I think that we've all experienced some collective trauma post-COVID or during COVID. It left a mark on a lot of people's lives. And so when we can understand the fight, flight, freeze response, it helps us understand when and where we are in the window of tolerance. So long after the environmental changes or conditions have changed, we remain in these readiness states to perform mental and sensory motor actions that may have been adaptive in the past, but you might notice now it just creates a lot more distress. So these actions become procedural, right? They don't require a lot of like cortical involvement. Like you don't have to think about it. It just happens. It's automatic and it's non-conscious. So essentially some of our stories, our trauma stories, get carried in autonomic dysregulation. So we just kind of live with this on a day-to-day basis. So I'm going to go into this just a little bit further. So core beliefs inform our behaviors and our body's stance. I said that a few slides back. So most human behavior is driven by procedural memory. It's our memory system for process and function that it's like tying our shoes or riding a bike or driving a car, something that we do on an automatic basis. At one point, it wasn't procedural memory. We had to really create a lot of energy to figure it out. And then once you do it so many times, it just becomes automatic, right? So it's when we function on that level, it becomes autopilot. And it's called the default mode network. So basically the default mode network its job is to conserve energy. It's sort of like the path of least resistance. We just don't want to think about how to drive a car, every little thing that we have to do. So we just sort of create shortcuts. In a lot of ways, it can be really helpful. In some ways, not so much. So the struggle lies in trying to make lasting changes when we're very practiced in doing something that's really familiar for many, many years. So when we're talking about the window of tolerance, it's this metaphor that describes a range of emotional and psychological states where people can function and thrive throughout their days. So within the window, it's the zone of optimal arousal. So that yellow box, the window of tolerance. That's when you can cope with everyday stressors. You can kind of navigate some of the challenges. You don't necessarily get overwhelmed or shut down. It's like you can handle them. They might be annoying, but you can manage them. On the upper boundary or up above the window in the red section is hyperarousal, right? So that is fight, flight response. It's like hypervigilance or anxiety, panic, racing thoughts. It might be anger. So you're in this like vibrating mode, right? You feel that energy around it. Below the window is hypoarousal. That's where freeze happens. That's where emotional numbness happens, emptiness, paralysis, depression. You kind of shut down. You're just like, I just can't anymore, right? And sometimes what happens is we go from window of tolerance in the yellow all the way up to the red, and we vibrate, and then we shoot all the way down into hypo and then shut down because our bodies cannot sustain that level of vibration for so long. That's when I talk with medical providers or anybody who's in the caregiving profession. That's hypoarousal. That's kind of burnout. Like you're exhausted. You just cannot sustain that level of anxiety and stress for long periods of time. Our bodies aren't sustained for that or built for that. Okay, we're gonna get into the body story. This is an exercise that you have a choice to do. I'm gonna send this in an email. You can choose to do this on your own fun homework. But I'm just gonna kind of explain the different versions of it. It's a powerful tool for self-discovery and self-acceptance. So it involves exploring your relationship with your body through writing, movement, introspection. It can be really personal and really transformative. So this is going to be very much your process. So I'm going to give you several ways to approach this, and just kind of see which one fits best for you. I encourage you to practice any of them if you can write them down. Just notice what you experience. So the first one is called focus exercise. Basically, the idea is that you focus on a particular part of your body, like your hands or your feet or your stomach. And then you just breathe into that part and notice the sensations. Kind of similar to what we did earlier today. And then you ask questions like, what's the temperature inside this part? Can I feel this part of skin that meets the outside temperature or fabric? What's that like? How does it feel? So when you begin to move that part, what do you notice? Is there ease? Is there pain? Is there mobility? Is there lack of mobility? Do you notice that there might be movements that feel easier than others? And then take a really deep breath or 2 or 3 and ask the question, what would it be like if I just softened that part just a little bit more? Just a little bit. And then what if I tensed it and then softened it again? The whole idea is to play with this exercise to help you understand that you have control over some of the sensations in your body. The second option is called body check. So again, consider your relationship with your body throughout the time that you've been alive. So I always say some of the longest relationships we have are with food, our body, and ourselves. And so it's a pretty long relationship. Why not try to create a positive one, right? So explore your general feelings about your body. What's your relationship to it? Are you angry that your body won't do what you want it to do? Are you exhausted by the chronic pain? Are you annoyed when it needs nourishment? Are you disappointed that it doesn't look the way you want it to? Do you feel confused by its communication with you? Maybe you feel unclear about its needs, or maybe you doubt what it needs. And then the third exercise is called movement exploration. So you just move your body freely and pay attention to how it feels. You can put some music on if you want. I don't care what you do, but you just sort of stand up and you maybe sway from side to side, and then just sort of feel how it feels to just move your body smoothly and gently. And you can start to notice like what kinds of things your body wants to do, like if it wants to push or if it wants to pull or if it wants to shake. You just experiment with different movements and postures. Again, you can try tensing up the muscles and then, moving them rigidly or jerking. Noticing the physical sensations, the emotions that arise. One thing that I do like to end with in this exercise, if you want, you can choose to do it or not, but sometimes I like to bend the knees and loosen the shoulders and just kind of bounce, because it just sort of feels I don't know, it just feels really good to like ground yourself and bounce into the ground. So when I send you this email, it's going to give you 2 questionnaires. One is going to be a body perception questionnaire, and another one is going to be a brain body center sensory scale. So this is a resource to use or don't use, it's up to you. It's just another way to get familiar with your body sensations, how you relate to your body, to build more awareness. So another acronym, because I love acronyms. I don't know why. I just do. There's so much your body's willing to tell, like really willing to tell you on a moment-to-moment basis. We just got to listen. So I created this acronym. So be open to discern your knowing. And what I mean by that is exploring the different sensations inside you and then outside you. And just notice the subtle changes that occur, any sensations you experience. It might be that that area needs a little bit more breath or a little bit more movement. The more you can pay attention, the more your body will thank you. And then we'll kind of close by this with this Friedrich Nietzsche quote. I just love it. There's more wisdom in your body than your deepest philosophy. And to me, this statement just suggests that our bodies often are overlooked and favor, intellectual pursuits. So we hold this wealth of knowledge and in our intuition that surpasses conscious thought. So there's a lot going on in there. All right.